No, you just
It's not preaching.
No, you don't have to do any of that.
someone's listening to us.
No, you're good.
Let's go.
Yeah, we ready. We're ready. You guys ready? All right. Welcome to the Soul Tapes podcast.
Yes.
My name is Adam Cruz.
My name is Antonio Reyes.
And we have some special guests with us today.
We do today.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Vanessa Cruz.
Ooh. Yeah.
My name is Gabby Reyes.
Oh, yeah.
And we are the Ribs.
Oh, man.
Well, today's podcast is going to be fun.
Yes. I'm excited.
If they say something that doesn't click with you, that is not our personality,
Yeah, it doesn't represent
it's a lie.
I know, I'm a little nervous. Oh, man. Well, I'm excited, man. I think, we wanted to do something new. Try something. This is actually something we wanted to do for a little bit, but have a conversation about, relationships. And you brought up a really interesting topic, really specifically about the idea of commitment, right? And what commitment looks like in, maybe through marriage or through dating. And there's all these different seasons, right? And, you guys can correct us if we say anything that's wrong.
That's true. You know what? Let me just set it up this way.
We will.
So, like 3 years ago, I was listening to the conversation with this actress, and they were asking her, "Do you believe in marriage?" And she said, "No, I don't believe in marriage. I don't believe you need to be, with someone for a long time. If you don't feel it, if you don't want to be with that person, you just walk away." And I believe that's the popular opinion right now.
Yeah.
But then something clicked in me, and I was like, well, that's fair. If you don't want to explore the depths of love, you can walk away with it. But the only way you can explore the depth of love is through commitment and consistency. There's no other way around. Yeah. The only way you can explore the levels, the layers of love is if you're consistent and committed. If you don't want that, that's perfect. You can walk away from it. Yeah. But we believe that God made us in a way that we desire, our souls long to go deep and to explore the layers of love, and that the only way there is consistency and commitment. So I think that if we talk about this, I think it's fair to say it's not just because we believe this in the Bible, but because we understand that the primary thing that God is trying to take us with Him and with other people is love, and that's commitment.
Totally. Yeah. Now, do you guys agree?
Or disagree? I don't want it.
Yeah, what do you guys think? We brought you here for a reason, to engage in these conversations as our wives, and What do you guys think about commitment and marriage and
you guys can push back, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the whole thing.
I agree. I definitely agree that in order for you to be able to get to know someone or to be able to experience the different layers that love has, like, you have to be committed. You have to stick with that person.
Yeah.
I was sharing with you guys earlier that when I was younger, I was reading like this book that my cousin gave me about relationships, and the first thing that I read was, love is not a feeling; it's a commitment. And of course, back then I didn't know anything about love, but I was like, like, you got to feel the love, like, you got to feel the butterflies.
Totally.
But now that, I've been in a committed relationship for 10 plus years, like, I understand, like, yes, it does take commitment, because there's days when I don't feel anything, I feel anger or, but I'm committed to him, and I'm committed to this relationship and the longevity of it and the depth of it.
Yeah.
So for sure, commitments is key.
Totally.
I agree. I think the reason why commitment is an interest, it's a perfect word for a relationship, because commitment takes work. I love, one of my mentors he told us this too before we got married, is that it's not that it's hard, because it's going to be hard, but it takes work. And I'll never forget that, because there's moments, obviously, since we've been married, that I'm like, this takes work. But it does. Commitment is it's an active word. It's not just a very stagnant word that you just, I'm committed to you. Don't just say it, but you have to actually do a lot to actually stay committed. So
and I feel like I like how you guys addressed the way you guys addressed it. You guys both said really good things, because when you think about commitment, I think what Gabby, like you're sharing, is this struggle that comes from like being like young and in love, right? There's a difference between like young and in love and like as you grow and mature, right? So I think that there's this maturity that comes with commitment. Like you have to have a level of understanding of what you're committing to. And I think that's what we end up doing is like, as like when you're young and getting into maybe a relationship for the first time, you have this desire to be loved, and you have this desire to, experience something with another person. But the reason why I think commitment is difficult is because it is very serious, right? It is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. It is something that shouldn't be a decision you make very quickly. And I think that's where we struggle when people get married in 3 weeks of knowing each other, right? When we have those moments, we're like, man, like, are you sure you guys want to make that commitment? Because it does have very big ramifications for the rest of your life. So I think that there's that we have to see commitment as something that's connected to this level of maturity, of being understanding of the decision that you're making, right? So
I think you see something very interesting in this. Ultimately, goal is like maturity, right? I think that when we don't when we don't want to put the work, we say no to maturity to a certain extent, right? Because the only way we can get to that point is through the process of tension, to the process of investing in the moments that we don't want to invest. And I think that when we actually say no to that, we actually saying no to growth and progress and maturity. Now, I think, and this is where maybe we can throw it out there for you guys, I think the challenge becomes, and maybe the people ask, but what happens if the other person doesn't want to work it out? What happens when there's hostility? What happens when there's, opposition in that aspect, or there's failure from the other person, in different aspects, and there's just pain? What happens there? So I'm not trying to answer it. You guys answer.
Yeah, totally.
Dang, that's hard.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's what commitment is. It's choosing that. So when I think about commitment is you're willing to, even when you disagree, or even when there's pain, and even when there's hurt, you're choosing to belong to someone. You're choosing to belong to make this relationship work. And so it happens with friends, it happens with our family, and it happens obviously in a romantic relationship. And so I do think it's hard. And so of course and it's not to ignore the pain of what people probably have gone through. And of course there's obviously reasons why you might want to step away or walk away from a relationship. But commitment at the end of the day is you willing to like put yourself down. It's a selfless type of act, which is really hard to do, because as humans we're very selfish. And so for us to be selfless and to let that go and put it down and be like, you know what, even though you've caused me hurt and pain, I'm willing to put that to the side so that we can make this work and like belong together. And so I don't know. I mean, it's hard, but I think it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, but I think, that's one of the differences when it comes to being single and being in a relationship. I think for me, I have kind of like an interesting story because, I only dated like one person in high school, and then, so I was single for a long
Really?
So I was single for a long time, got in a relationship, and then after high school, I didn't really date hardly. Like through college, it was just like hanging out with friends. I didn't like really like have any serious relationships. So I think I always had like a misconception of dating and being in a relationship was that my lens of looking at it was always from a very selfish perspective. It was always like, oh, I'm gonna have the best time of my life. We're gonna have fun. Like I never thought about problems. I never thought about the arguments. I never thought about disagreements. I never thought about having to watch her shows and not my shows. Like I never thought about those moments where it's painful. Yeah, it was very fantasizing like relationships. And so. But that's what we do when it comes to, but I think that's also why as being in a relationship, being married also, I always like to let people know when they're single, like, hey, like, don't overlook this season because you have a freedom that is different from being in a relationship, right? In the sense that you have a choice to walk away. You have a choice not to submit yourself to certain levels of pain and hurt and frustration. If you're, hanging out with someone and you just don't agree, you can walk away, and that's okay, right? But when you're in a committed relationship, that commitment comes with saying, I'm willing to stick it through. Yeah. And that's where people do need to question, hey, like, is this relationship worth it? Yeah. Because if they're not willing to stick it through, and maybe I am, there's some level of disconnect
completely
there, right?
It's so cool because I feel like you said something about living in this illusion, in this like wonderland. And I remember somebody was talking about this, and if I'm not mistaken, was Andy Mineo, and he called it romantic porn. That we live in this idea. Women suffer many times with romantic porn because of movies, because of songs, because of all these things. That they set them up for this idea that it's not reachable. It's not real. Yeah. Right?
You mean you're not going to be like The Notebook?
You didn't wearing the...
You're going to build a house for me and then wait for me?
I'm on fire with you. Like, what do you want to eat?
Yeah, what do you want to eat?
Just tell me. What do you want? I actually have a friend who, I'll never forget, in college, she literally had this epiphany that she romanticized Disney movies. I know it sounds so funny because you look at Disney movies and they're kid movies, like what? Like she's a college student, but no, like watching movies that ended with this amazing ending of like your Prince Charming. Yeah, it affected how she dated. Like so when she decided to date people, she expected this, you know. And then even to go more personal, I even remember watching The Bachelor. I totally guilty pleasure in college. I don't watch it anymore, so don't judge me. But I watched The Bachelor for a couple seasons, and I'll never forget that I didn't realize that when we started dating after college, it was unconsciously in my mind that my dates needed to be amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Am I going to give him a rose?
I didn't help with that either because I started off really strong too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so I remember making a personal decision and telling him like, hey, I'm not going to, because he actually watched the show with me.
All right.
And so I remember telling him like, I don't think I'm going to watch this anymore because it's giving me ideas that I know is unrealistic, and I need to not think that because that's not gonna be normal. Like it's not normal. Yeah. And so, not that I wanted the helicopter ride to who knows where, but just even the way they acted, and it was always like amazing, never fighting. Like it was just so unreal. But
You want to say something?
Yeah. So like it's funny because for me it was interesting. I started dating him when I was 17. So I didn't get to do the whole dating thing in my 20s. Yeah. So like I don't know what that looks like, but I do totally see how like that whole like romantic, dream world is, cuz sometimes like I would even compare him to, and they've said this, like you usually compare your relationship to other couples that are around you. So whenever we would go out with other couples, like a guy would hold like their girl's hand, I'd be like, excuse me. So like regardless of like whether you've dated, you've
middle
recently
school, high school.
So like it all affects you in different ways, and that's when like you were talking about maturity, like maturity comes in, and I forgot who was talking about it, but that's when it comes in and you have to start like also being wise about your relationship. But the one thing, after being with him for so long, the one thing that I do appreciate about commitment is that I've been able to get to know him in different ways. And like I could say that he's not the same guy that I started dating. Yeah. And I'm thankful for that because obviously there's growth. Yeah.
But is working.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful to be able to be with someone and see their growth. It's also rewarding. Yeah.
It's something that I feel like when it comes down to like that idea, or like we have this perception of like that they're not real. The standards, that they're not real. Yeah. I feel like many times, what that causes in us, is that we jump obviously from one relationship to another because we're searching for that, we're longing for that, right?
Yeah.
And then what end up happening is that we tend to blame them, but also at the same time we kind of start analyze. If we're honest, we analyze ourselves if there's anything wrong with us, right? And perhaps it's not even with us or them. It's just the ideas and the standards that we have, right? Not saying that you have to lower your standard, because some of us, we need to raise our standards.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that what if we actually, we put healthy standards of the type of man and relationships that we want, besides the idea of like taking me out to Beverly Hills and an expensive place. Yeah. What about character? What if you put a standard of character? I want that person to be joyful. I want that person to be, he's gonna do what he says he's gonna do. Like we actually put a standard of character rather than like just serving me, or doing certain acts of service, because that's gonna fade away through the years, right? But if we do character standards, I think that's sustainable.
Well, I think it's funny because I think that's exactly where people miss it, because that's why they end up in really bad relationships, because I think that's actually an extremely critical piece, is that when your standards are either too low or too unrealistic, or they're just not even in the realm of what they should be, is that because for me, that was a big reason why I didn't date a lot, was I from a very young age was always thinking like long term, someone I could realistically see myself with. But even then, I know it was crazy.
I was the opposite. I dated like a lot of people.
But
when I was in high school.
But the thing is, I think that when you have like really like you have clear standards in what you're looking for, I think that's what helps you make like sober decisions about being in a relationship. Because when people often enter relationships, like Gabby, you're saying, like, just based off feeling, the chemistry has to be there. I know that's big for girls. Like I don't want to speak for women.
Why are you trying to stereotype?
I know. But I'm just saying, I know that's what I've heard, is that's a very common thing, is that and it's not that that's not invalid, but that cannot be the only reason, because people end up thinking, we have good chemistry, but the person I'm with is unmotivated, doesn't have goals, doesn't treat me as well as I should be treated, but you're with them for the sake of the chemistry, because we laugh together all the time, and there's these superficial things that tend to keep you in relationships that are just not healthy for you. So I think those standards are actually very much more important than we kind of like we tend to talk about them, but I think there's actually a really big piece there that if we spend more time creating those standards and knowing the type of person we want to be with, that really helps kind of foster out the people that we probably shouldn't be with.
That's true.
Yeah. And I think that even if you're already with a person, that doesn't mean you can't set up like standards.
Yes.
Like, if you're already in a relationship, like you could still do that. You could still analyze and be like, you know what? If this person's going to, be committed to grow or to work on these areas, like then I want to analyze and see if I want to continue to be with this person. Yeah. So it, it plays both ways.
I think it has to as well. Like regardless, because I think at the end of the day, you're never going to find the perfect one, right? No one's going to like meet that standard list, check, right? So you have to figure out those like red flags, things you're willing to compromise on, or the things that you're hoping like, hey, maybe we can work through this. But the good thing is when you have that list, you can have those clear conversations, because if you don't have it, then you're just kind of sitting there. I know like we tend in relationships sitting there hoping it's going to change. True. And that doesn't work as well either, right?
Yeah. And I think the biggest commitment we should have when it comes down to that is, I personally feel, is the commitment to growth. If you actually engage with someone, right, and it might not be the perfect person, but there's a lot of things that attract you to that person. I think the thing you should ask is like, are you committed to growth? Committed to growth that I'm willing to invest myself into and to develop myself and grow in our relationship and myself, and if that person is willing to do that, I think that's a great sign. If that person is not willing, like because a lot of the times I remember hearing these conversations, sometimes you need to look at the voices of that person allows that to come, because that's probably that person that he is or that she is, right? Those voices that she or he allows to come in, right? And if he doesn't allow or she doesn't allow anyone to speak to her, that's a problem in the future. Because if that person doesn't allow in that season to to get wisdom or to have an outside, perspective, or even a healthy perspective, that means that when you're in it, that's gonna be a problem. Right. So I think that we need to be committed to growth.
Yeah,
like good. To put that work.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's all the whole being teachable. I mean, it goes back to even like the basics of even leadership. Is like if you are teachable, it's gonna show that you are mature, and it's gonna show that you're committed. And so I totally agree. I think you need to be teachable. You need to be committed to growth. I think that was a big thing for us. Like so. I have a very strong personality, and so I like to put myself out there. And so Joseph can probably speak into this, because I remember you sharing, like, that was one of the things that, because people see me and they think of this, like, dominant personality, and I'm super assertive, and I'm very, like, I will share what I think, and depending on the spaces I'm in. But so what happens is that I get this, I think people get this idea of me that they're like, she's just like set in her ways and like blah blah. But if you actually get to know me, I'm totally open to growing, and I actually personally love. This is gonna sound crazy, but I actually enjoy criticism. I love to see where I can grow, where I can get better. And I know it's not that I love it as in like, oh my God, tell me what I did bad in, but when I hear it, I'm like, okay, I can grow, and I take it, and I'm able to grow in that area. And so in our relationship, that was big. I don't know if you want to share about that.
Yeah, that was actually probably one of the biggest things that when I was like getting to know her and dating and through that process, like her commitment to growing and getting like, honestly, I think the biggest thing with growth is being aware of your blind spots and being aware of the areas where you are lacking in or struggling in, because a lot of times, and it's knowing that and being willing to work on it. Because you have two sides of that coin. People either don't acknowledge or recognize the areas that they need work on, or they know them very well and clear, and they no question, they'll agree with you on it, but they will not work towards getting better in that area. And I think that's where, for her, of course, her and I, both of us, I mean, trust me, there was plenty of areas, like I said, I walked into dating and was like, oh man, this is hard. I remember because we went through a season before we even officially got together where we were just dating, and, we were committed to just kind of like, because we were friends for a long time, and there was this process of, okay, if we're going to choose to do this, let's kind of take it slow. And I remember those first couple months, man, I remembered like having some like nights where both of us were just like having serious conversations, and it was just like, for me, like really understanding what it meant to be in a relationship with someone was not that glamorous picture where, yes, we had amazing times together. We always did. I mean, that was one reason why I felt connected to her, because even just as friends, it was fun to be around her. But being in a committed relationship was a whole different level, because now you're talking about, and I think, we can kind of elaborate on that, is that when you're committed to someone, they're seeing pieces of you that not everyone gets to see. So like when you're talking about like this type of person that you are, and maybe people viewing you from the outside as this like strong personality, strong opinionated person, it's like, but when you're in a relationship, like you're smart enough and wise enough to understand that that's not the way that relationships work. It's not a one-sided opinionated person and that just way it goes. No, you're working together to build a life together. So, that was kind of a piece of like our story and what that looked like, especially just through that dating process.
I think for us, I think commitment became very, very real when we had to face the brokenness that we both had. Right? And because we came in, like I personally grew up in a household that nobody taught me how to treat a woman. So I was a very unhealthy man, and that caused me to hurt Gabby in our dating season. So I remember one time we actually sat down and we were like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right. So we're gonna get mentors and counselors. Till this day, we just met with them a couple hours ago. That was like, it's been 6-7 years? 8 years. 8 years with them. And I remember that day, when we actually decided to do that. For me, I think I was more open than for her. For her, she had a more trouble to engage in, like, do I have to really tell my
it's funny because he actually tricked me into our first meeting with them. Like, he's like, I'm gonna take you out to dinner for your birthday, and I'm like, ooh, okay. And then we show up to the restaurant, and it's this couple that he had told me about that he wanted us to meet with. And he's like, don't be mad, but I invited them, and I'm like, on my birthday, I'm gonna, tackle the mess that we have. Yeah.
And I think that's when it became real, because to actually reorganize, restructure, set up boundaries, set up like standards for us wasn't the easiest thing. Was very difficult. And I think that when we think about commitment, we're like, oh yeah, I'm willing to commit maybe in some hard parts,
right?
Not really knowing that it can be very messy.
Yeah.
And that's when actually the commitment is going to be tested.
Yeah.
And I think some people can choose to walk away, and that's fair, maybe because of their actions. But sometimes we need to actually rough it out through it, and show that we're committed to each other. And I think that was the season that we were in for, like, I don't know, it took a long time for us to heal from a lot of, until this day. But I think in that season right there, we can say that we got to the altar, in a healthier way, in a healthy version of ourselves. And we were happy for that. Yeah. That we didn't get to that place maybe because, our brokenness, because we wanted to walk away from things, or which is...
Yeah, but most importantly, I think that we got married knowing that we were committed to growing and committed to, like, working on the things that weren't working out with us. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So that first meeting that you had, were you guys married or dating?
Dating.
We were dating, yeah.
So after that dinner, like, how did you respond to, like, following up that, like, was this something that you were willing to, like, work through, or was it something that you still had, like, pushback on? Or what did that look like after?
Yeah. It definitely wasn't like, oh yeah, now I'm just gonna, like, go and look for help all the time. It was definitely something that I had to work towards. But after that first meeting, I was able to see, even, how, even as the short meeting, like, I was able to see, like, wow, there's hope, because their story was different from ours, but had some similarities. So just to see, like, where our relationship could get to was very hopeful. So it's like, yes, we're here and we're in this mess and we're broken, but there's, a possibility for us to look like that. So I continued to go on my own. He at first had to really push me, but then I just started going on my own. But it's funny because a lot of the times when we would argue, there'd be, like, really difficult moments. I would go to her expecting her to tell me to break up with him. Because I'm just gonna be real, he was the one messing up a lot,
I was.
So I was like, please tell me to break up with him so I could start over, start fresh. Yeah. But I didn't have, like, the strength to do it on my own. Yeah. And he didn't, like, she didn't. She would, like, be like, work on these things, like, let's work on this. And I'm like, just let me break up with him. Like, if you tell me right now to break up, I will. But I'm so thankful, because if I would have left him, I would have just taken all that brokenness to another relationship. And then, the pattern continues. But I was able to work and grow and learn things that I wouldn't have been able to learn if I would have left that relationship. Not saying that, like, people need to stay, to learn, but for us, that's what happened, because we both were committed to growth, and we were both committed to allowing other voices to speak into our relationship.
And to be clear, it's not like you guys were in, like, this, like, super toxic, very, like, dangerous situation, right? Like, it wasn't, like, clear. Like, she would have, as a counselor, she would have.
For sure.
So, so that's where you could know the differences for people, like, understanding their circumstances, right?
And I think there's a very important piece, and we're going to jump into very dark, like, weird waters, but I think because it's needed, we need to talk about it.
Like, let me sip my drink real quick.
Well, I think that the piece that I feel like came and make it very hard was the sex part.
Okay.
Because we jump into sex without knowing what we were doing, So we jump into it so fast that piece messed up a lot of our relationship. Not because it's bad, but because it wasn't the season for it. Right? And I think that the problem with jumping into sex, saying, well, I have to test the car before I buy it, right? Yeah. That whole analogy to me is dumb.
I hear that so much from people. It's
yes.
so crazy.
And and the problem with that analogy that I have, first of all, you're not buying a car. It's a human being.
Yeah.
You know? The second thing is that the problem when you jump into that is that you mess up your communication. Because you long to be in a deeper relationship with someone. So the deeper piece is sex, right? So when we jump into that, you don't need words. It's physical. And then you're very close. But that starts messing up your communication with the person because you no longer have to communicate with that. You just have sex with that person. Right? So for us, it was easier to have sex than to actually deal and talk through our brokenness. And to restructure that was very hard. To restructure communication because what is going to sustain you is going to be talk. It's communication.
I think and I think there's research that backs it up, even with like being physical with someone. So like literally what happens in our brain is we have all these like these endorphins happening that make us feel like this high. And so what happens is that's why I feel like a lot of even young people and even young adults that I know in general will jump into that quickly and think that that's the way to go. But I think what happens is that it really fogs up your view of a relationship because you are in this high and then once it goes down, you start to see the ugly and you're like, oh my God, let's have sex again, you know? And then it brings it back to, and so I totally agree. I think you guys were literally going through what literally happens in our brain is that there's a fog that it really blinds you from actually seeing what's actually happening when it comes to communication, when it comes to red flags, all those things. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and I think what we do is like sex becomes like another like way to solve our problems. And like as young people, when you think about young people like engaging like in sex at a young age, usually what they're doing is like getting into relationships very quickly, engaging in sex very quickly because they're trying to find healing for the hurt that's inside of them, right? And that's one aspect of it, right? And so when you think about why rushing into it can be like damaging or also like kind of dangerous is because of that reason is going into relationships that maybe this person, it's not that the person's not the right person for you, but it's maybe that they're not ready for a committed relationship, right? Because that's one thing that I learned like growing up, especially in high school, is like, especially when high schoolers want to get into relationships at a young age, it's like you don't realize as a guy, I used to always think like girls are like so much more mature and they're clearly ready for these relationships and maybe I'm just like immature and not ready. But you don't realize that it's learning on both sides, that both people are trying to learn what it means to be in a committed, loving relationship, right? So when you just go into like the sex and use sex as a form of like, okay, well we're mad at each other, so let's use that as a solution. I've learned even in marriage, like, maybe like we're like on a like off path and I have that thought like, okay, like we'll have sex and everything will be like better, right? But then 10 minutes later, like you get in an argument again, and you start to realize like, and I feel like that's a blessing almost because like it's like God like showing us like, hey, like that's not going to solve your problem. Like there's a form of intimacy there where we can celebrate and love each other through sex, but if there's an issue there, then you need to solve that issue. And that's where I think we start to learn and realize, and that's what happens when people kind of get in that cycle of using other forms or other vices to try to solve their hurts and pains, but that we know that that's like not the case.
Yeah, because I think the big challenge when it comes down to sex, there's a huge issue about intimacy, right? We don't know how to be intimate with other people without sex, right? Obviously, and we live in a time where people feel lonelier than ever. Right? When we're all of us connected, we feel so lonely. So the thing that makes us connected with someone is sex many times, right? Because it was meant for that, to feel connected with someone. But when there's no commitment, when there's no love, when there's no this consistency with each other, it's just empty, And it makes you feel connected to that person, but then later on, it just leaves a bigger void inside of you because it's no longer there, that person, right? And I think that living in this time where obviously, we talk about that, and I always like to hear these conversations because they're like, I want to try to have sex before I get married because I want to know if the sex is going to be good. And I understand their point, but the reality is that if the most important thing for you to know is if sex is gonna be good and not communication, you might miss the point. Because you can, I think you can work the sex piece of it. You can talk to sexologists. You can change position, whatever you want to do. You know, you can play the game. You know what I mean? But the communication piece is a very important thing. Because at the end of the day, you can be married 10 years. You're not gonna have sex every single freaking day. You know that you become busy.
You're probably bursting people's bubbles right now. That was Joseph's bubble.
That was my bubble.
Every single day, twice a day.
Man.
You know, like
you know, as a young single man, I was like, man, I could do this.
I can do this all day.
We literally thought every day once we got married.
But the thing is, see, to me, and this is where I think it's actually a valuable conversation, because I wish someone would have told me getting married that it's not that. So the thing about sex is that this sex is another part of your relationship that you guys have to learn with each other, like growing in it. Like there's actually a learning process of kind of like that connectedness. So like when you learn to communicate with someone, like you learn their rhythms, you learn like we learn, like sometimes like if she gets annoyed or she's having a bad day, I know not to press in. I know to give her space. Like, you know, like same for me. I know when I need to like, you know, just do something, get up, go. Like I know, like, you know, there's things like that. It's like we all have our own things where we can learn how to do life with each other, and sex is no different. Like, and so like when people use that as an excuse, oh, I want to know if it's gonna be good, like that's a complete. So to me, I would say I don't get it, because that's actually a completely like false like ideology. Because in sex, you have like every person you have sex with is gonna be different. So you have to learn that it's learning to be with that person, and that's gonna be completely different with who you're with. So if you're gonna commit yourself to one person, you don't have to worry about that piece, because you're both gonna learn together, no matter what your past looks like. On both sides, you have to learn how to be with each other, and that is actually a learning process. It's not just something that you go into and it's perfect every time. Like no, it's part of being married. It's part of that being committed to someone.
I feel like sex is such a very like vulnerable act as well. You know, totally. And when you're in a committed relationship, like when you're in a marriage and you've, you know, taken a step to like commit and work on things and all of these things, like there's this not safety, but like there's this commitment to like, okay, like this is vulnerable, but like I'm gonna embrace that. We're gonna work on it.
It's like a safe space, right?
Yeah, like a safe space. And for me, it's definitely changed. I mean, we from when we were having sex before marriage to after marriage, and it like having sex before marriage did mess up our sexual relationship, and it's something that we've had to work on. But we're committed to that, and I think because we're committed to that, then it's not like we're gonna be like, okay, peace, I'm gonna go look for something else. You know?
Exactly.
So I think like it all comes back to that commitment that we decided to, you know, to take with each other.
Because it's a like you said, you know, I think this it's a sacred moment, and I know that many times this word of sacred, it can be very like I don't get it.
Churchy.
But the reality is this is beautiful, right? The idea of sacredness is that you value, you honor, you protect, you care for that. That's the idea of sacredness, right? And if you don't think about sex that way, you know, that because I think most of us, a lot of us, you know, come from very broken sexualities. Even our parents, you know, legacies of people that have come through brokenness, abuse, you know, unhealthiness. And for us, you know, trying to break a lot of those cycles, it's a hard thing to do. You know, it's a very hard thing to do. It's not that we can go to, you know, Disneyland and come back fixed, right? We're so much more complex and more complex when it comes down to sexuality. It's such a deep thing that is connected to our soul and who we are, right? That only the one who created us and designed us can heal us through this process. But I do believe that there's hope, you know? I always think that my desire is that I can break the brokenness of my family when it comes down to our sexuality and our marriage, to develop and to create a better future for our legacy. You know, I don't want them to deal with what I deal with, And but I think going back to that whole commitment thing, I think like we need to look at it not just through the eyes of like about my pleasure and what I want, right. But also how am I gonna say? And I think jumping into maybe changing the gears a little bit. Yeah. I think it's so important to educate ourselves about the other persons, right? There's so many assessments, you know, love language, you know, so many beautiful things that you can learn. Enneagram, strength finders, and so many other things. Let's educate ourselves. Like, let's say you're in a committed relationship, right? Let's say you're dating and you're trying to figure out if you're going to be very committed. But let's say you already passed the commitment piece, you know. Educate yourself. Like, let's indulge that, you know. Let's embrace that. Because we want to learn about who that person is, right?
Yeah, part of being in a committed relationship is being committed to learning, being committed to, because like to me, it's like to walk into a relationship and think that it's going to be anything other than like having to be selfless. Like you have no idea what a relationship means, because that's where, to me, it's like that's what like I think I kind of understand. I think I was always confident about like the dating season, like, oh, I'm gonna be an amazing boyfriend. I was like, oh, man, I got this. I got like all the date spots down. Like I was all about that. But then like getting married, it was a whole nother level. It was waking up with each other. It was waking up in the morning when I'm not a morning person and she is, you know, and now.
Good morning.
You know,
same.
You are.
So bad.
You know, and it's like, so learning to understand that, man, like I have to, my selflessness is going to have to be on another level, and that's hard because we are innately selfish beings, right? So we often walk into relationships thinking, what can I gain from this person? What can they do for me? You know, oh, you haven't done enough for me lately. Like, what, you know, this isn't working out. Like, what, you know, what's going on? So, you know, understanding that, like you're talking about, like being committed to learning about yourself, learning about your partner, like all these things are very important. And I think that the desire would that both of you would be on the same page with that. Like both of us would be like committed to that. And for me, like I know for us, like we've enjoyed like learning more about ourselves, learning more about each other, and that only makes our relationship even better because we start to understand, like, oh man, I know that the reason, because I think we get frustrated in relationships, like, why do you do things this way? Why are this way? And I'm like, I don't know, I just am, right? Like you're just like, I don't know, like God made me this way, blame him, you know? And it's like, no, but when we start to see like God did make us this way, and it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just that we have certain things about us that this is how we are, this is the way we do things. And when we can learn to say, okay, this is how you are, and I understand that, like I understand, okay, that you're this type of person, or you have these, you know, things about you. So, you know, that helps us to kind of also lessen the frustration of the when there's things that happen that we may clash with, you know?
Even getting to know that person, like knowing that person without them having to tell you, like that's how I mean, like, let's always communicate, you know, but then you can get to know a person without them even having to communicate how they're feeling. Like I remember there was a season where we were fighting a lot, we were arguing a lot, and the reason was because he wasn't helping around the house, and that frustrated me because I like to keep, you know, I like things a certain way.
You run a tight ship.
So then he was talking to our counselor, and he was like, we're arguing, like, I don't know why. And then she's like, well, are you meeting her basic needs? And he's like, well, and literally he's like, okay, like, I'll do that. I know what she likes. She likes a clean house. So then, like, I show up one day from work, and he was mopping, and I was like wind blew in my face, and I was like, dang, boy, you're fine. Like literally, all he had to do was mop the floor. Like it just like made me fall in love with him all over again, you know?
I love it. Yeah, and I think it's because commitment is a choice. You have to choose every single day to be committed to someone. The same way as committing to love. Like, you have to choose to love someone. So same thing with what you even said, wrapping it up to the beginning, what you said, Gabby, of like, no, it's just about feelings. But no, like, it's a choice, because there's going to be days where it is going to be hard. It's going to take work. But you have to get up and choose to be like, I'm going to commit to this person. I'm going to choose to love this person. And some days we get it right, and some days we get it wrong. But every single day, it's a new day to choose to be committed to the person that you're with, or to whatever relationship you're in. And so I just think that's the power, is that we have the capacity, like our brains are so powerful. Like we choose when we want to get out of bed. We choose when we're going to go work out. We choose when we're going to eat healthy or not. We choose all day. And so if we choose to be committed, I think that's the game changer. We have to, it has to be a mental shift that happens in our minds, and we have to just choose. And then when we do that, I think it comes out more naturally. Because then throughout the day, I think you'll be surprised. At least I found myself more surprised to be like, okay, I could choose to be annoying right now, or I could choose to just like bite my tongue and just be like, yes, babe. Like, you know? And so it's a choice, because I can choose to make something bigger than what it is, or I can choose to, you know what? I'm just going to love Joseph right now because I know he's had a busy day at work and my day is a lot more open. And so anyway, so those are just, I think, choices that we have to make every day.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote, and part of the quote says, marriage is hard and divorce is hard, or a relationship is hard and divorce is hard. Like, choose your hard. So like they're both going to be hard, just choose what hard you want to do.
That's good. What hard you want to work on.
What hard you want to work on.
Completely. No, I think that's so true, because I feel like we're not talking about relinquishing our choice to commitment, right? Because people can translate it as like commitment, like you have to go through it, like there's no other option. There is other options, right?
Right.
There are always other. There are always other
you always
options.
have options.
Exactly.
But the reality is, what is it you really want, right? And for example, for us, you know, thank God we have healthy marriages around us. Not perfect, but healthy, right? We have different ones, and when I look at them, I was like, man, I want to be like them. I want to be 50 years old and be committed to my wife and be that type of man, you know. Or I want that type of marriage, because at the end of the day, like, if you're in faith or you're not in faith, we always, you know, dream about that. You know, we make music about it. You know, like when you're old and you walk with that old person. You know, like we always we have this idea that's for some reason that's an ideal that should be our life, right? So, but the only way to arrive there is to actually, you know, choose, like you said, choose,
put the work in.
Yeah,
totally, man.
So good.
Yeah, that's really good.
Well, I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah.
Is that a wrap?
So, is it?
I don't know, man. Yeah, I mean, you know,
I think it was good.
I think I like it too. I think commitment, it looks different in different seasons. And I like what you said at the end there, that, you know, it's not about perfection, but it's about healthy. And I know for myself, like, that was something that was a learning experience for me, because, you know, I had to learn the difference between what a, you know, healthy relationship looked like and one that, you know, wasn't. And I think understanding that the absence of problems and conflict is not what determines a healthy relationship, but it's the ability to work through them. It's the ability to find a resolution and to not diminish the other person, not disrespect the other person, not do something, you know, out of character, but to be able to have conversations and be able to find a resolution. So, you know, I think we may have to have more conversations with you guys. I already have other conversations that we can go through, because it's good. But thank you guys so much for joining us. Of course. Well, we are the Soul Tapes Podcast. My name is Adam Cruz.
My name is Antonio Reyes.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
I run to my wife and we chill on the couch. I mean, really chill, really to have some fun. I slide in her mind and we catch up on life. It's a beautiful thing when we doing it right. No stress on the text or who blow up the line. Woo.